Hi, this is Nick. In this video, I will share how to personalize and customize subtotals in a matrix table. For instance, I will show you how to make changes on the column subtotals to display the max value of each row, and how to personalize the row subtotals to show the mean value of each column, and then how to customize both column and row subtotals to display different values based on your preferences. Scenario 1. Let's customize the column subtotal to display the max of each row. Step 1. Let's create a measure for sales percentage as you normally would. Step 2. Another measure needs to be created to customize the subtotal calculations. And let's check out this measure one piece at a time. First, we're going to use the has1value function, which will return yes in a matrix visual for those specific columns. And then it will return no for the subtotal column. And then we will use whatever we put on the columns in the matrix visual. So in this case, the student column. And then we put the sales percentage measure created from step 1. And a friendly reminder that this needs to be an existing measure, not some calculations like this. So the whole has1value function will tell PowerBi to normally display sales percentage for each specific column as usual. And now let's customize the column subtotal. The combination of max x and values function will make sure it returns the max sales percentage for each row, which is what we need for the column subtotal. And here's the whole DAX function. Please take your time to input it onto Power BI before we move on to the next step. And now we need to create a matrix visual, put corresponding columns on the rows and columns, and then put the max custom subtotal on the values. That's the measure we created from step 2. And then please make sure you turn on the column subtotals and turn off the row subtotals. And then go to column subtotals to rename the label for the subtotal. Now we figured a way to customize the column subtotal to display the max value of each row. But what about we want the averages? Actually, it's very simple to make that change, and there's only one thing that needs to be adjusted, which is the maxx function. And if you want the averages, just change it to average x or mean x for the mean values of each row, and of course the sum x to sum up each row. Now let's see how we can customize row subtotals. Step 1, same thing here, as we will use the same measure for sales percentage. And then on step 2, when we create the measure to customize row subtotals, we will use the same format and structure with one thing to adjust. Since we're calculating the row subtotals, we will use whatever we put on the rows, in this case, the week number. And then we're going to follow the same process to create a matrix, adding the corresponding data for rows and columns, and then putting the measure on the values for customizing row subtotals, and then turn on row subtotals and turn off column subtotals. And then finally rename the label for row subtotals. And now let's look at one more scenario with advanced tricks to customize both column and row subtotals at the same time in the same matrix table. For the row subtotals, we will display the mean values of each column, and for column subtotals, we will display the max values of each row. And then for the grand total at the bottom right corner, let's keep it as blank to avoid any confusion. Step 1, same old, same old. We will use the same measure for sales percentage. And then step 2, let's create this measure with fairly long formulas here. And for the highlighted ones, please change them to the data you will use on the rows. And then for those 4 highlighted ones, change them please with the data you will use on the columns. And then for detailed specific columns inside, we will use the sales percentage as usual. And then finally for the grand total at the bottom right, we will keep it as blank to avoid any confusion. And then the last step is to create a matrix. And then now you have the customized values for both column and row subtotals at the same time in the same matrix table.